This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I am Billy Embody, happy to be joined once again by former SMU offensive lineman Hayden Howerton, and we will get into previewing SMU Louisville, an 11 a.m. Central game on ESPN on Saturday. We'll have all that and more as we'll answer our subscriber questions at ontheponyexpress.com and join ontheponyexpress.com today. Save when you pick up an annual subscription. It's the best deal around. You can jump on the message board, interact with Hayden, myself, our entire staff at ontheponyexpress.com. But before we get into the SMU Louisville game and previewing that, we do have to remind you guys that we are presented by our friends at StatusJet. And StatusJet is the way to fly. I can tell you that much. David Henry and his entire team, they've got it down to a science. Getting you from point A to point B with that level of luxury that you'd expect from a private jet company. This is the time of year where SMU football is now on the road. SMU basketball schedule is now out there, and it is time to go to StatusJet and get that discount code working in your favor. Code PonyUpACC gets you a discount on a round trip flight. Reach out to your friends, your coworkers, your family, whoever might want to go with you, and just say, hey, let's have this discussion. We've got to go to Louisville. We've got to go to Duke. We've got to go to Stanford. We've got to go to UVA. You heard from David Henry on an earlier podcast this past month how difficult some of those places are to get to. So look into a private jet opportunity. They've got big jets that can get you there and back on the same day. They've got the smaller variety. They can pick up anything for you, really. I mean, this is the great thing about working with a company like StatusJet. They can fly you anywhere, anytime, and that includes beginning to plan for those Thanksgiving, Christmas type of vacation. So reach out to StatusJet today and plan your trip with them right now. Again, great supporters of us on the Pony Express and SMU Athletics as well. Hayden, as we jump into this week 5 game, SMU sits at 4-1 overall. They've been on a heater, beating TCU, beating Florida State, Louisville coming off a loss. And that is, really interesting in this, game as we look into it, because, they're going to be a team that's going to be looking to bounce back, but they're going to do so in a stadium that's going to be absolutely rocking. It's family weekend. They're actually honoring the Rumble in the Jungle fight I saw on their site. So people in Louisville are going to be pumped up. And, speaking of that history, the Rumble in the Jungle, this is a program that started over 100 years ago. Take us back to that time and kind of walk us through some of the history of what is a really proud program, and a program that at one point was in the same conference as SMU as well.
Yeah, man, super excited for this week. This is going to be awesome, getting to go on the road, our first ACC road game, and playing a really cool opponent. So let's get to know the number 22 Louisville Cardinals real quick. Football started around the same time as SMU. They started in 1912. We started in 1915. But they've been in the ACC longer than us. They've been in it 10 more years. They joined the conference in 2014. But we were both in the American Conference for the very first year of the league after the implosion of the Big East in 2013. But we did not face each other that inaugural season. Cardinals' all-time record versus SMU are 0-2. The Ponies have a 2-0 advantage. With the last time these two teams met was in 1984, a non-conference matchup where SMU won 41-7. Out in Irving at Old Cowboys Stadium. The program has one Heisman winner all time, that of course being Lamar Jackson in 2016, but they've had some serious quarterbacks roll through there. They've had Johnny Unitas, Teddy Bridgewater, obviously, are both Louisville quarterback greats. And then let's talk about the venue a little bit, man. L&N Federal Credit Union Stadium, 65,000 strong. It's going to be rocking this weekend, man. Family weekend, the 50th anniversary of Louisville, Kentucky native Muhammad Ali's Rumble in the Jungle versus George Foreman. And what an environment that these guys are going to walk into. It's going to be loud. It's going to be intimidating, if you will. But this will be our first big road test, man. Just finishing up with Louisville's history in the ACC. They played for a conference championship last year, but they have never won an ACC title. The door is definitely opening for the program, similar it is to ours, but they just haven't gotten over the hurdle yet.
And I think this is such a cool first road test for a multitude of reasons. I was listening to Gramlich and McLean, friends of the program, as we know, and they were talking about how Rhett Lashley and his team is facing, basically the ACC championship game last year, which they are, but they're doing it in back-to-back weeks. It's quite the hazing, so to speak, just like SMU basketball to open the New Year's facing Duke and North Carolina or in early January. Of course, they open with Virginia in early December, but that type of a test for SMU, despite Florida State being down right now, is the really interesting part that, this game, means so much for SMU now that they did go and beat Florida State. It means a lot for Louisville because that door is open for them to make an appearance in Charlotte and potentially win an ACC championship. And despite the setback last week, this place is going to be rocking. I've watched, actually kind of funny enough, just watched a lot of Louisville football. They're a program that have been able to find themselves, obviously, with really elite talent at the quarterback position, but they've also just had those cool environments. They've had different moments where this thing has been rolling for them, and it's been a fun program to watch for the most part, even though they're just not, they're a national brand really in basketball. And that's not to slight their football program, but it's just kind of different, at least from my perspective. And at the same time, they love to get after it and support Louisville because, I believe it was Kevin Jennings talking about it this week. I mean, similar to Kentucky, I mean, there's no pro team. This is it. This is their NFL team. You're either, you're on one side or the other. And that's the cool thing about this program, is that they really support it in a big way as well.
I think similar to our program, man, it's kind of like a pendulum. For a while there, I think we might have been a basketball school, but I think it's starting to swing the other way to where, hey, we're looking more like a football school as years are starting to go by. But you talk about how, yes, we're facing the two ACC championship game contenders in back-to-back weeks. If I'm Coach Lashley, that makes me excited, man. Let's get a measuring stick in our first two ACC games, and let's see how we compete. Obviously, we took care of business against Florida State. How their status of the program is trending, we'll put that to the side for now. I mean, we're 1-0 in ACC conference play, and now we get to face who was number 2 last season. And like I said already, this is our first real road test. This is going to be a lot different than going to, East Carolina, South Florida, even Cincinnati when they were rocking. I mean, their stadium is only 40 or something like that, but we get to play in front of a real college football environment. And look, I always enjoyed playing on the road. I know these guys do too. I talked to some of the offensive linemen and they felt the way that I do. There's just a little bit less distraction when you're on the road. You don't have to worry about, oh, who am I getting tickets for? Is my family, what time are they coming into town? Am I going to see them on the boulevard? The noise of what all your classmates are going to be doing on the boulevard pregame, it goes on. But it's you, the 73 other players who are traveling, and the coaches are going to get on the plane. You're going to fly to wherever you're going, and it's you versus the city at that point. And look, it is the best feeling to ruin someone else's Saturday fun by beating their ass on the road, and you send their fans packing on the way home. I'm excited for these guys. It's going to be awesome. Can't wait, and we'll get to the actual on the field stuff here in a minute.
I know you've been to East Carolina as well. That stadium kind of, I mean, it's on top of you. It was not packed like it had been last year, for other blackout games and the Pirate Night and things like that. But it just had an eerie feel there. And I feel like kind of Louisville stadiums like that. NC State I've been by, it's kind of like that whenever SMU does get, down that road to playing them. It's just an interesting environment, and these Louisville fans, they're going to be ready to go, even though it's, noon Eastern time. They're going to be up and at it, licking their wounds potentially from whatever dinner and drinks they went out with their parents over. And, it's on big ESPN. People are going to be out for that.
East Carolina, the weird thing about that was that was a program that had 2 wins when we went out there. And because, like we talked about, there's no real NFL team close to Greenville, North Carolina, similar to Louisville, Kentucky, that is all they have. So even though I was just downplaying their stadium, I mean, people are very much into those kind of football games when you have nothing else going on. It's why Arkansas Razorbacks have so many fans. That's the only thing going on in Arkansas, where they just have a bazillion fans and everyone's a Hog fan. So it's going to be similar with Kentucky, with all the Louisville, Kentucky strong this weekend. And, we'll see what happens. I'm a little bit surprised that there isn't any kind of ACC network appearance, in a back-to-back week. But, hey, we'll catch up with our friends Eric McElwain, I'm sure, at a later point this season. But let's get to the keys to the victory, man. I do think that we're going to be able to play well, but to do that, man, we got to ignore the noise. There's a lot of hype around SMU right now. There's a lot of people talking about this program. And look, it's everything that we've wanted in the past. We wanted nationwide bandwagon fans to jump on the SMU bandwagon, honestly, and I love it. And I'm all for people coming along who maybe haven't been SMU fans in the past. But look, I talked about before the law of the price tag, and that is a very real thing. It is only going to get harder from here because of all the attention that we're bringing. People are going to want to beat us more because of how much attention we're bringing to ourselves. And when you look at a program like Alabama that's been able to do it for so long, I mean, that is what we want to strive to be, to where you have a target on your back every week and you're able to go out and perform. So we're going to have to drown out the rat poison a little bit, because frankly, Billy, we're the rat poison, unfortunately. We're talking about how great these guys are, and they're going to have to drown us out. And these guys are just going to have to be the best player they can be on Saturday. No more, no less is needed. They go out and play their best game. I think they're going to be fine. My second point, defense has got to travel. Tyler Shuck, he's taking care of the ball really well this year. Only has 1 turnover on the year so far, and we got to put hats on the football. We got to give our offense as many opportunities as possible to take this ball, slow this game down, run the rock, and control the clock, man. And if we do that, I think we'll be fine. And lastly, offense needs to capitalize off of those turnovers, and they need to start fast. We got to quiet this crowd. We've got to get the 65 strong out of it, where when you are able to run the football, score early, this crowd is going to get quiet. It'll be loud for the first third down, but once we start get rolling, fans will, they'll lose the wind out of their sails, and we'll start to get rolling. And like I said, we just got to limit possessions, man. We got to run the ball. And if we do all 3 of those keys, it's going to be a really fun plane ride home.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing that this new era, this not only new era, this new SMU is all about. Rhett Lashley, I think, has done a really nice job of embracing this and realizing what this team might be versus last year's team in the American, and just kind of how it was built and all of those things. This 2024 edition of SMU has played great defense all year. They've had their moments, like any college football defense does, of, either whether it be a lack of a lapse in focus, or whether it be just kudos to the offense for putting a drive together. They play great defense. It seems to travel, or we'll find out if it really travels this week. But they've been on, a good stretch of, defensive football, quite frankly. And then the other key is running the football, and that's something we'll get to, of course. But SMU is stayed committed to that, at least over the last 2 games, which I think is encouraging. If they would have won a little bit of a different way last week against Florida State, and now Kevin Jennings had 254 yards passing, that would have been okay, all right, wow, that's impressive for them to do that different ways. But man, I want to see this SMU team run the football and stop the run.
Both of those things reflect the culture. When a defense edge, walls, and swarms, and you've got 11 guys running to the football, that's culture. On offense, when you have all 5 offensive linemen playing hard, covering guys up, chasing the ball, you've got great perimeter blocking, that's culture, man. And that's something that's been encouraging the last 2 weeks, is we've seen the culture of this football team come out, and these guys are tough, they're hard-nosed, and I've loved it, because while, yes, throwing for 400 yards a game is fun, that's not really a culture deal. That's something where we just have better athletes than you. We're going to out-athlete you. We're going to make a guy miss, and we're going to be gone on a deep route. So let's start with SMU getting the football. Cardinals have the number 17 total defense in the country. They're only allowing 271.5 yards per game. That is really good. They also have the number 23 rush defense. And when I read those 2 stats, man, I got a little concerned, to be honest with you. until I realized that SMU sees a better rush defense in practice every single day. SMU's defense is ranked 16th in the country in run defense. So if there's anyone that's going to get us ready, it's going to be the guys we're seeing on Tuesday, Wednesday, getting ready for this game. But look, it starts up front like it does for every great defense. Louisville's going to run a little bit more nickel than probably we've seen. They run more of a 4-2-5, but they will mix in some base 4-3 if we get into short yardage goal line. / bringing in some of the big guys like 6th offensive lineman, Stone Eby. If they see that, they might switch out a guy and bring in more linebackers. But they do have a stand-up DN linebacker hybrid on one side, in their nickel personnel groupings. Depending on where you're at, they call him the Buck, they call him the Jack. It really just depends on what the coaching staff is wanting to call that guy, but it all means the same. And it really reminds me of the Buffalo Bills defense. When I was in New England, we played them twice. They were in our division, and they would run nickel defense until you got bigger than 21 personnel, where to briefly explain 10, 11, 12, 21, and 22 personnel, the first number is the running back. The second number is the number of fullbacks. So 21 would be 2 running backs and 1 fullback or tight end. So you would have to get 2 tight ends out there to get them out of that. But anyway, I don't see Louisville being that extreme. If we get short yardage, I think they'll get into regular 4-3.
And that's going to be, such a interesting piece to this, because I think they've done a really nice job lately of figuring out the times to use all the different personnel groupings. They've got RJ Maryland, they've got Matthew Hibner, they've got Stone Eby, they've got Keyshawn Smith, they've got Moochie Dixon, they've got Jordan Hudson, Romello Brinson, questionable this week. They've got Jake Bailey, they've got Roderick Daniels, who's been playing running back. I mean, SMU has so much versatility before you even get to the running backs. And while the depth is certainly being tested, they're expecting LJ Johnson back, which is going to be a good thing for SMU, especially when you're talking about going on the road, to have another veteran back. I mean, you're not going to have that sideline full of guys in a way. I'm sure they're going to travel every running back, but this is a team that right now is just been able to throw so many different things at Louisville. And, I think there's a little bit of pre-planning in a sense at certain points when Rhett is really feeling it as a play caller, or the offense is really humming. You look at that flea flicker SMU ran last week against Florida State. Yes, Florida State was bringing up the safeties, and Garen Justice, Rhett reported, just said, "Hey, this is here if you want it." But Rhett is probably at that point in the game, even thinking ahead a little bit, saying, let's put this back out on tape, that we're really not afraid to run this. This is something that's going to help keep Louisville safeties up higher and respecting that. And that can open up things for a guy named Brashard Smith as well.
It's similar to when we talked about earlier this year about running the swinging gate, in the second game against Houston Christian. Now it's just something that they've got a game plan for. They have to take time, whether that be Thursday or Friday during the walkthrough, and say, hey, this is something they ran. We don't know if we're going to get it or not, but we need to be prepared. So instead of preparing for our base stuff, they're preparing for specials, which that plays into our hands. But their defensive line, man, I think they have a really solid defensive line. This group has athletes that are coached very well, and I think they're going to play a lot harder than we've seen so far. We've been able to kind of take it from the last couple teams where the second half wasn't close and the game was out of hand. That's not going to be how it is this week. So we'll start with their stud, Ashton Gelati, 6'3", 275, number 9 defensive end, first team All-ACC last season. Guess what, tackles? Welcome to the ACC. Now you've got a real test on your hands. This guy had 11 sacks and 14 and a half TFLs last season, led the team in both, and he is a true pass rushing threat. He has a whole bag of moves he's going to pull out, and these guys are going to have to be exceptional with their technique this week to be able to win. But I believe in Garen Justice. I believe we're going to do it. But number 93, Jared Dawson, 6'2", 305. That's more of their 3-tech. 3 sacks already this year, so it's not just out on the DN position. They've got rushers in a couple different spots. This guy does a great job of shedding in the run game, and we're going to have to keep pressing, and we're going to have to keep our hips engaged to keep him covered up and keep him from shucking us. Now, he splits reps with a guy I hadn't heard of before doing my study for this, and that's number 90, Renee Conga, 6'4", 290, highest graded defensive player for them by PFF. Now, PFF gets a little wonky at times, but they're 4 games in. I mean, he has played well, especially in the big ones against Notre Dame. And he has no sacks this year. Buddy has 8 pressures, but he is a stud in the run defense. He's going to have to be a guy that we're going to have to get some double teams going to roll them off the ball, cover up our linebackers. And then the only reason I'm going to mention this next guy, he was an honorable mention ACC guy last year, and I don't want to give him any more locker room material where they're going to pin this up. But number 99, Desmond Tell, 6'1", 295. That's not overly big for a nose, especially in this league. Only one tackle so far this season. He's kind of been held to a minimum by all the teams that they've played. And then their hybrid DN, number 19, Logan Trammell, just a guy to watch for. He'll drop into coverage a little bit, but that's where they start up front.
This is the program that has really done a little bit of what SMU's done in the transfer portal as far as addressing those trenches and addressing, I mean, so many of this team, so many positions on this team. I mean, that is what Louisville has done really the last couple of years. And as Jeff Brom's taken over and done all of those things, I mean, they've been able to really just revamp this team that was in such a different world under the previous coach. I think it was Scott Satterfield. He's now at Cincinnati now, I believe. He's up at Cincinnati. And they brought in 32 transfers this offseason. And some of them, I believe, have actually already moved on. Could be wrong. A couple of interesting situations there. But overall, I mean, you look at what they've been able to do, and that is kind of sometimes where college football is. Some programs are all in that sense, and others are, a little bit more balanced. But when you have a coach who's still trying to change the culture and get it in the right direction for what they envision, that's where you could see that, and they can add in numbers and add in talent and all of those things. And they've certainly done that overall, and have just been able to revamp this team as a whole.
I think when you get transfers, man, you have realistically a 60% chance they're going to develop into guys that you can rely on, guys that are going to embrace the culture. I want to give a credit to Coach Lashley. It seems like everybody he's brought in has really embraced the culture, has helped us on Saturday, especially the Miami guys, man. It seems like every time we look up, it's like, oh, he was from Miami, he was from Miami, he was from Miami. And so shout out to Rhett for getting those guys over here, because, boy, they sure have helped us. But you're right. Louisville has grabbed a couple guys. I forget which one it was. One of them we've played before. He was at USF. I got to dig back into my notes and find that. But, yeah, so in the current age of college football, you got to win now. And so now with the coach coming in and developing this unit and taking them to a conference championship, and they weren't able to pull it out, okay, well, now we got to do something different, because you can't do the same thing and expect a different result. So we're going to have to go out and get some dudes who can help us win.
And speaking of the transfer portal with Louisville, I mean, they were able to go out and get Tyler Shuck, and he's had quite the interesting college journey overall. I mean, it feels like he's been in college forever, but he's been able to put together a really lethal passing attack, and that's something that I know this is the best passing attack SMU has faced all year, and even though TCU's been able to do some good things in that regard this year, I mean, this Louisville team is no joke in the air.
This is a very good offense. Number 17 total offense, which is kind of weird. They're 17 and 17 on both sides of the ball, but 471.5 yards per game. Tyler Shuck makes this offense go, man. You said it. Sixth-year senior. He signed with Oregon in the 2019 recruiting cycle, and then he transferred to Texas Tech after 2 years in Eugene, spent 3 years in Lubbock, and now he's the guy at Louisville, and that is not an understatement. This is his first year in Louisville, but he's played very well so far. Like I said, 11 touchdowns through the air. He does add a little bit with his legs. He's taken off a little more each week, and he's rushed more times every game so far this year. He had 46-yard rush versus Notre Dame last week. So if he gets out in space, he's got a little bit of wheels. He's got some speed. It's not Lamar Jackson levels, but it is something to watch, because Nevada did expose our defense's ability to contain a running quarterback. And I'm sure that's something that he's watching on film right now of, okay, when did he take off? When are the safeties turning their back on it, where he can really expose that. But their wide receiving core is extremely solid. Number 1, Ja'Cory Brooks. He's their leading wideout, 6'3", and has 368 yards and 4 touchdowns so far this year. A guy that they're really leaning on to be a consistent pass catcher for them. And their explosive guy is number 0, Chris Bell. He has 188 yards on only 9 receptions. So it's more than 20 yards for every reception. He's very explosive, has a pair of touchdowns already, but this passing game is great. But I also really think that they have a strong run game as well. They're averaging 178 yards rushing per game, 5.7 yards per attempt. That's the best running game we've seen yet, Billy. BYU is only averaging 139 yards per game and 4 per attempt, and everyone thinks that they have a great run game, which I think they do, but this Louisville team on paper is better on the ground than they are. They have big guys up front. Their 2 tackles are 6'7" and 6'9". They have a ton of length, but in the run game, I think that makes it more difficult. You have an advantage when you're actually a little shorter in the run game because you're not getting as much separation, because that's what the defensive line wants. They want to press you, get you fully extended so they can shed. When you bring them in close to your chest, they're not able to do anything. So them having length is going to be effective for them in the passing game, but we're going to need Elijah Roberts and co. to continue the tear that they've been on for the past couple weeks.
Yeah, this Louisville team has been able to, step up against, some weaker competition. They put 62 on the board against Austin Peay. They won 49-14 against Jacksonville State. And then, they kind of grinded one out 31-19 against what's a solid Georgia Tech team. And then they lose 31-24 to Notre Dame. I'm interested to see where they go in terms of, the run game against what is going to be behind Notre Dame, probably the second best run defense that they've faced, even like statistically. And I don't even know where Georgia Tech ranks rush defense. So I could just be talking out of the side of, out of my tail end there on Georgia Tech. But from what I've seen from Georgia Tech, I would rank it Notre Dame, SMU, Georgia Tech in terms of what they've been able to do stopping the run. They average 10.5 yards per carry against Austin Peay, against Georgia Tech 2.1, against Notre Dame 3.7. So this is going to be like that battle of almost similar to how I felt going into the Florida State game. Like, would this be can SMU do what they've done against the rush much of the season, even though they're facing what is a very talented run game, a very talented offense, passing game, all of those things? Can they step up and meet that challenge? Because, yes, we saw them athletically be able to do against Florida State, but this Louisville team has better coaching, at least right now, than what Florida State has. So it's a really difficult game to predict because Louisville did start that hot. Now will we see as they get into that meat of that schedule, and SMU, you've got to include them in that now. Which way does it go?
Yeah, Georgia Tech was the number 18 rush defense, Billy.
Okay,
So you're spot on, man. They've got a good rush defense. And so we're 2 spots higher. I didn't see where Notre Dame was on that list, but they're not higher than SMU. I know that. But where it comes from, man, is when you get into the meat of your schedule and you are running the ball, call it 40 times a game, your backs are going to get worn out. So that is also something that, 1, we're going to have to watch for, and 2, Louisville's going to have to watch for. And as much as I want Brashard Smith to get the ball 50 times a game, we're also going to need him in November. So that's something to watch. And I just think the more balanced that we can be on offense and the more one-dimensional we can make them, the better we're going to be. Because I think something that we might have misspoken, not sure yet, knock on wood, is our defensive back play. Those guys have been aggressive. They're jumping the routes. I mean, they're causing a bunch of turnovers for us right now. I'm hoping that trend continues this weekend with Tyler Shuck, who takes care of the football so far. But if we can do that, we can cause some turnovers, man, and really just kind of flip this offense on its head for Louisville, then we're going to be able to have some success. But you want to get to predictions?
Let's do it.
All right, man. Go ahead.
I was hoping. I was like, all right, he's going to let it rip. Let's do it.
I think we're both kind of scared here.
This was a really tough pick for me, but I'm going SMU. And I just think that for some of the reasons I kind of alluded to there, when you look at what Louisville's done so far this year, and I'm sure, you were talking earlier about not giving them something to pin up in the locker room or whatever, and hopefully they're not listening to us, but, SMU has played terrific team football all season long. And this is the test that now turns to the road. And SMU didn't fail the road test earlier this year against Nevada, but it wasn't great. And that was very different football team then. Different quarterback situation, just all sorts of things that were different. And so I'm not even going to consider that in terms of how I should view this game. But SMU is taking care of the football. They've run the ball well. They've stopped the run very well. And they've played, like Coach Lashley says, passionately. And that is something that as they go into this final piece, they've taken care of their business at home. They should be jacked up still off of what they have done and accomplished while still recognizing how talented and well coached Louisville is. Like if Florida State was the appetizer of this is what a football team looks like, welcome to the ACC. But oh, by the way, they got like a lot of issues just as they are built and coached right now. Louisville is kind of that refined team in that respect. But I still like what SMU can do in this matchup now that I've seen them as a whole, especially the last 3 games. Like I expect them to be able to slow down Louisville's run game. I think it is going to be on the back of Tyler Shook, and he is operating at a really good level. But you want to know something that you mentioned that is a great point? When you are one-dimensional, whether you're home or away, it's not usually good. There are very few teams that can be that way because maybe how they present things or they have a great screen game that's an extension of their run game or whatever. But I don't consider Louisville to be in that realm just yet of they can win being one-dimensional. And I think that's where SMU has been able to get their opponents into. And you ride that. If you ride Kevin Jennings not really worrying about, this crowd. I mean, he's played in AT&T Stadium, big stadium with 40, 50,000 people in there, rooting him on for the first Dallas ISD state championship in 50 years. This might have a little bit more crowd noise, but it's not going to scare him and this offense. And a lot of this offense, I think, has that edge to them where they, like you said earlier, kind of love it. So long story short, I'm going to pick SMU 31-24. You hit the 30-point mark. Rhett Lashley's 20-1 all-time as a head coach. At that mark, they've won 16 straight at that number. So I feel like they got to get to 30. You get Brashard Smith. They said he wasn't limited this week, which is good. And you get LJ Johnson back. That should put the recipe together for 40 carries, which would be, again, right in that sweet spot of what we talked about as well.
Man, you're making me feel bad. I already put my pick in. But Scott Natty said it best on y'all's Walking Strong podcast. Florida State won the pregame, but good thing they don't keep score during that. Florida State looks pretty. I think Louisville is going to look pretty good too. And I think their on the field is going to be a lot better than Florida State. SMU still has some catching up to do as far as the talent level that these guys are going to be able to put onto the field. And our first big road test in 5 weeks, mind you, is going to put that, out there. The whole world is going to see that on ESPN1. But I got to believe in SMU, man. I talked to Eric McElwain's father, and, something that he said was, oh, people give my son a hard time because he only picks Clemson because that's his school. Well, guess what, man? SMU is my school. This is partially my show as well. So I'm going to keep picking SMU. So I love the Ponies. I think they've got some serious bite in the dog, and that's what really is carrying this team right now. They also have a lot of confidence after the last couple weeks, and we've been able to go out physical teams that on paper should not mess around with us. I mean, Florida State at the beginning of the year, I think people thought that would be a bloodbath. And I think a lot of people have had this game circled on the calendar saying, well, if we don't win this one, do we belong in the ACC? And so there's a big test to this weekend. But if we continue to run the ball efficiently, man, and we continue to play great run defense, force them to be one-dimensional at home, we're able to stay balanced and play with a lot of effort, we're going to get this done, man. We're going to get a ranked road win. We're going to be 5-1 heading into the second bye. I got SMU 27, Louisville 24.
I mean, you want to talk about a guy that jacked you up overall, just talking with him. It's Papa Mac Lane. He really awesome dude. When we first met Eric this summer when he was here, he spoke so highly of him and just his just demeanor and how he approaches things and all of that. He shared a good story about his dad meeting Lane Kiffin, which was interesting. And I mean, his dad just matched up with that and just exceeded even, any expectation I had of the type of guy he is. So really good stuff on that. And look, SMU maybe look good. Picking Florida State, I'm still allowed to pick the Mustangs now, and that makes me feel even better about it. So yeah, I think you mentioned something where they're playing with so much confidence. I mean, while there's always that moment in the fans' mind, you should at least feel confident with the way the team's played the last 2 weeks in particular that they can get this done. I mean, you're not going into this game saying, "Oh, this is where it comes crashing down." They've got the team to do this. They play their brand of football and they execute.
Teams usually take the personality of two people. The head coach, which Coach Lashley, regardless of what's happening in the game, keeps to himself, stays aggressive. And then to balance him out, you have Kevin Jennings, who is Mr. Calm, cool, and collected. So we'll see which version of the team we get, but I think depending on how the game is going is really where this team falls. I think in the TCU and Florida State game, yeah, let's step on their necks and knock them out. But I think early in the year, especially that Nevada game where, hey, we're down, and I know Kevin Jennings wasn't the guy at the time, but this team responded and was able to fight back and win that game. So I have to believe we've faced a lot of different scenarios already in college football, and we're going to see a lot more going forward that we're not expecting. I'm sure there'll be an overtime game at some point this year or something similar. But this team, I feel like, is ready for the challenge. This team is prepared, and this team is hungry, which I love it, man. I'm so excited to watch them this weekend. I'm going to get to Abilene early because my brother plays at 3. I'm going to get there like at 7. So I'm going to leave here super early and so I can watch the Mustangs on ESPN.
Before we talk about something with Kevin, speaking of cool, our friends at Rhoback have put together quite the collection of SMU gear. And I do want to mention that they've come out with some new stuff as well. I'm wearing the Triple D hoodie again, sponsored by Rhoback. So we're going to support them and wear the stuff so you can see it. I get compliments all the time. Tons of message board subscribers have worn it as well. And then they dished out this new guy right here. The hoodie with just your red with the Mustang going across it. They also have, I want to call attention to the Gerald J. Ford Stadium look. A great polo. I know it's starting to cool down maybe a little bit, but if you miss Ford over the next month or so as they play on the road, it's a good chance for you to pick that up. And again, you get to use the code PonyExpress20 for 20% off your order at Rhoback.com. It's first-time customers only. The fabric is great. Everything is just so clean. Really kind of got that moisture wicking ability as well, which we love. And they've got great shorts too. So check them out, Rhoback.com. That's RHOBACK.com. First-time customers only. Use code PonyExpress20 for 20% off your first order. Speaking of cool, I did want to ask you this to kick off the viewer questions, and I'm going to ask the first viewer question. What do you think of Kevin Jennings waving to a Florida State player as he went out of bounds? Did you see that?
I did see that, man. When a quarterback has the confidence, when the quarterback has the confidence to do it and he's backing it up, you love it. I mean, when anybody can talk, it is really hard to back it up. And Kevin, fortunately for us, has backed it up. I think this team does play with some swagger. I think it was Kobe Wilson who posed with the TCU player during that game, which you got to. It's a rivalry, man. But we're making our mark in the ACC right now. And I don't want our mark to be, we're dirty players or anything like that. But this guy's just out there having fun. Yeah, there it is. Kevin's out there having a great time. And
so good.
You love that. You love that. That's a guy that just loves football.
Shout out Matt Vasinski for that picture, our longtime on the Pony Express photographer, just doing some great work there. He's got some terrific shots as well, Ford Stadium. We're going to try to put those together for maybe some prints or something like that of that first game and do something like that. And all right, before we get to the rest of everybody's questions, we do have to once again remind you guys that we are presented by our friends at AKM Turf and Greens. They just sold another deal to one of our On the Pony Express subscribers. So that makes yet another OTPE member or podcast listener that has jumped on board. Shout out Mr. Riggins. It's a great job that Alex and his team is going to get done. This isn't it. If you're watching on YouTube, it's about to get underway. But hopefully that one gets going soon and we could share that with you guys. And they just continue to do great work, whether it's revamping your backyard, whether it's revamping your church or your school, recess and play area, or you're tired of maintenance and you want to go to the turf side of things, reach out to them. akmturfandgreens.com, code PONYUP for $500 off your project. So hit them up and check out what they can offer you today at akmturfandgreens.com. All right, viewer questions. Look, we've got a lot. I love it, the way you continue to bump the question thread. I like that we can see, once again, how it goes over the course of the season. It's one thread. It'll keep you going. And we lead off with a question from the president of SMU. He is on theponyexpress.com, actually, R. Gerald Turner. Question for the next week. This is last week, heading into the Florida State game. Do you think turf versus grass has an effect on lower body injuries? Could this have impacted our running backs? Would love your insight from your time at SMU and Ford and Armstrong, as well as around the league. There was buzz around this topic last year from the NFLPA.
This is a great question. I love talking about this because as a guy that played a lot of snaps at SMU, I really could feel a difference when we played on grass versus being on turf. I also think a part of that had to do with how we practiced. When Coach Dykes was here, we were never on the grass for more than half of the practice. We were in the indoor every day. And so when you're on turf 6 out of the 7 days of the week, whether that's just your post-game running, your practices, your walkthroughs, your Fridays, and then playing on it on Saturday, you could definitely just feel it in my joints, my knees, my ankles. And so it was something that if we were playing on turf, I would have to go get extra treatment. It was just one of those deals where it just took me longer to recover just because it's not as soft as grass. I mean, I had heard some rumors that Ford was going to transition to grass, and that made me excited. I hope that does happen.
Yeah, but they ran out of time this summer to do it with all the stuff on the field, so it wouldn't get set. But we'll continue that rumor next offseason. It should happen.
Should happen. And TCU had great grass. That was actually a positive of playing in Fort Worth. I actually really liked their grass. Playing at Temple, playing in the Eagles Stadium, phenomenal grass. Now, when it's done poorly, I would rather play on turf. At East Carolina was some of the worst grass I ever played on. Pre-game warm-ups was me. It was always me and Elijah Chapman. We would always, do our one-on-one pass rush against each other, and we would always do our one-on-one run block against each other, good on good, which he always came and found me. I always gave him a hard time about that. I'm like, dude, let me get some confidence before this game. But anyway, our first one-on-one run blocking rep, I mean, I fall on my face. The grass just completely goes out from under me. And I literally go into the locker room pregame looking like I've just played a full game. Like my jersey's brown. Guys are like, what happened to you? And I'm like, I fell in warm-ups. Go out for the first snap, and I'm feeling, a little nervous about it. I've been thinking about it for the last 25 minutes. So I kind of gingerly take my first snaps my first step, and I get rocked by the East Carolina dude. And so just a setup for a really poor day. We obviously got our ass kicked in Greenville that game in 2020. But yeah, man, prefer grass 90% of the time.
All right. That's great, Ralph. Please spill more tea. Any flavor will do.
I can't say I even have any new stuff right now. I mean, I'm sure if I thought enough in the archives, we would find something. But, man, we'll be here for the next hour if I really do that.
All right. Mustang 23, Isaiah Wacobia basically asks, what are your go-to Boulevard drink and food choices? If you had, and we'll get to the next one. So, yeah. Food.
Man, I've only been on the Boulevard a few weeks now. I mean, I'm not as sophisticated as Bill Armstrong. Epic Wines is great. I'm glad that you guys have that on the Walking Strong pod. But, man, I'm a Pony Pills or a Coors Light guy. We don't have an official a beer sponsor yet for this show, so maybe they could get over here. And then food choices, man, I just like some barbecue. I mean, the seafood boil that we had at your tent, Billy, was awesome. It was really, really great. Hunt Sparks, Ben Sparks' brother, was like, dude, you hooked me up bringing me over here. But traditionally, yeah, I like traditional Texas barbecue tailgate food.
And then if you had to choose, this is a really good question. I'd like to answer it too. If you had to choose one non-ACC team to add to the conference based off their city, atmosphere, et cetera, who would it be? And full disclosure, didn't mention whether you're promoting a group of 5 or just adding whoever you want. So I don't know if you want to pick 1 and 1 or just.
I'll go 1 and 1. If we could add one group of 5 team to the conference, I would, even though they were one of our biggest rivals, I would probably take Memphis with us. I think there was a lot of really fun games versus them. I think the Liberty Bowl is pretty sweet. It's historic. They're doing a lot of renovations to it. That is another town that's pretty passionate about their football, especially when they're good. And then I would say a current power program that I would want to bring over. I love the Southwest Conference. I think it would be cool to get another one of the old Southwest Conference teams back in the same conference as us. I've been to a couple Baylor games. They don't sell alcohol at their stadium, so it's not crazy rowdy. That's an L. Man, I don't know. Maybe Arkansas, maybe an SEC team, bring them back in, but I don't know if they'd ever leave the SEC.
I don't think so. I would go, I go back and forth on the group of 5. I would love to see USF get an opportunity. I know big commuter school, nothing really to do like SMU, but I've seen it when it was popping, at least back when Jim Leavitt was the head coach and they were number 2 in the country and all those things. And it was pretty cool. And they're actually investing. They're building an on-campus stadium. I believe they built an indoor. I could be wrong, but they just did football facilities and all of that. And actually their coach, Alex Golish, he's kind of a stud. Like, not to scare anyone, but I mean, he would be on the list if he keeps kind of getting that program back on track. It was really rough shape when he took it over, but yeah, I think USF would probably be the group of 5 that I'd nudge up, and they'd also be in the ACC footprint, and then just any old school. I would try for like a Kentucky. Kentucky would be cool. Like getting a basketball school to join the ACC like that. You'd have two conference foes in state. I know it's not big market, but like if you got the Kentucky brand of basketball, I mean, that would be pretty cool. So I would say that. I probably could have thought about that question more or longer or whatever, but just said Georgia or whatever. But it's something like at least maybe slightly realistic is
right.
Probably what I was going after. All right, A2D2 asks, what's the status with Omari A. Board? Did he already peak or is he nursing an injury this year? So have you heard anything?
I haven't heard anything, honestly.
Yeah. So what I said and a lot of people immediately thought, oh, former top 100, high-end prospect. He's getting a bunch of NIL, all of this stuff. Like, Omari was looking for a fresh start after Ohio State, and he comes in as a junior transfer. He spent, he spent 2 seasons in Columbus and played in 5 games as a sophomore in 2023. Didn't play as a freshman in 22. Has battled injuries. He's played in 2 games this year. He's played against Houston Christian and he played against TCU. He has 2 tackles on the year, but the reality for him is that he's been injured and it just doesn't look like he's got the explosiveness of the other guys. Obviously it's easy to say that when you're playing behind Elijah Roberts, but that's kind of his status. I mean, I don't know if he is hurt, and that's why he didn't play against Florida State, or just that's kind of how it went. But yeah, he's just kind of been banged up throughout his career. So he is a great dude, and he's on this team to be a Dallas guy that works hard, is giving it his all, and I mean, he's a good depth piece. I mean, if he gives you 10 snaps, maybe a game, that's a good thing. You know, I mean, like when you have Elijah and you have Cam Robertson. So,
yeah, defensive guys don't need to take 50 snaps a game to be effective.
No, I'd have to look up the PFF on Elijah Roberts, but against TCU, I think he had 47 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's our number one. So speaking of that, our top 4 graded defensive players are all all of our defensive linemen.
Love it.
So on defense, yeah,
that's why you give DePony Sports DTX right there. What's up, Hayden? This comes from Comet 7777. What's your analysis of Louisville's D-line? So we've already hit on that, but if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, just guys that play hard, guys that are coached well. It's going to be a good test for us. It's going to be guys that are going to play all the way to the end of the game. So it's just one of those deals where we can't get lulled to sleep if we're playing great and, you know, we're kicking their ass and all that. It's going to have to be a 60-minute dogfight in the trenches.
And how does this team, match up in the trenches? Follow-up
I
question
believe
from Pony from Tampa.
I believe in this unit. I believe in Garen Justice. I've been in the room for, on and off the last 2 years. This is a room that can really do something special, honestly. And I know this room has caught in some flack, early in the season for kind of how things went against BYU. Hopefully, I think these issues are ironed out by now. But I feel good about it, honestly. I think that this is a unit that can go and play well. And are things going to be perfect? No, they never are. We might give up a sack, on a crucial third down, but you got to have a short memory as an offensive lineman, a quarterback, and a defensive back, because bad things are going to happen. You're going to give up a sack, you're going to throw an interception, you're going to give up a touchdown, and you just got to flush it and move on to the next play.
All right, this one gets super into the weeds. Flock of seagulls, and I mean, I just think I like tweets from opposing fans that talk noise about me all the time. For the record, Kyle Cooper, SMU special teams coach, liked a tweet that was slamming the long snapper. Bad form by the coach? ? If you don't like it, don't botch the snap. Where do you fall?
Twitter or X is a dangerous place now. Yes, as much as you want to ignore the noise, I think it's in our nature sometimes to literally search your name and see what people are saying about you. Because on one hand, you want to be like, yeah, Hayden Howerton had a great block on that touchdown. But then there's going to be that person that's like, Hayden Howerton's the worst offensive lineman we've ever had. And so it might just be one of those deals where he's saving those receipts for later. But I don't think he would bash Will Benton publicly. I mean, Will has been a great player for us. Yes, he's had a pair of bad snaps so far this year. And unfortunately, that's the reality of special teams, is the less someone knows your name, the better. But everybody makes a mistake.
Well, and to your point about the likes, I kind of thought people couldn't see the likes anymore. So that is how, I don't even know where to find the bookmarks.
Yeah, that is weird, actually.
So that is how I would keep a receipt. I mean, unless I send it to myself or something. But then you got to dig back through the Apple phone that is impossible to search for things now. So I don't know. It's trying to read into that is a whole nother level too.
Yeah.
Of whatever.
That might be a panic room. One that made
that's a much better. That's a much better panic room. I mean, they can panic about stuff like that.
Yeah.
Alan Stang, and if Will Benton and Kyle Cooper didn't have a good relationship, Will would have probably transferred. I mean, that's
right.
Just the name of the game. All right, Alan Stang, what does typical recovery look like post game when you were playing at SMU versus now with the new facilities? What was the worst visiting team locker room facilities you dealt with?
I love the second part of that question. People ask me that all the time. Typical recovery, man, after a game, it was the later in the season, the longer you would have to block out in your day for recovery things. Even if you didn't walk away with I rolled my ankle, I got a MCL sprain, even if it was just bumps and bruises from the day before. I mean, depending on what time you got home, I mean, we would always have lunch at like 11. And so I would always get there at like 10:30 because I would try to gain back the like 10 pounds I had lost the day before in the ball game. But you'd go to lunch. I'd go down for treatment because our lift/run didn't start until about 1. And you'd get as much treatment as you could in those 2 hours. Whether that was just getting your body back, whether that's getting in the cold tubs, whether that's doing some game ready stuff, which is like a compression ice sleeve that you can put on different points of your body. Whether that was just getting in the hot tub, to kind of loosen back up because you get stiff, especially playing on the road. You get on a plane and fly back. I mean, you're stiff the next day when you wake up. The new facilities, I mean, they've got water treadmills, I mean, which was incredible for my back rehab in the NFL. That's something that was a huge get that the Cardinals had that in their facility. So I think it's all pretty much the same. I know there's a few more machines in the new facility that guys have, and they were trying to explain it to me. And I'm like, dude, I would need that done to know really what that even means. So these guys have everything they could ask for from a recovery standpoint. What was the worst visiting locker room / facilities? I would say from an actual facility standpoint, like what was the worst? Tulsa Golden Hurricanes, 100%. I mean, we were basically in a shed in that visitor's locker room, and you had exposed like fiberglass insulation, like touching you in your locker. You're like, dude, what is this? And I would say worst overall experience is probably Cincinnati. Old stadium, they would throw us in whatever their FC Cincinnati, their soccer locker room. So there's only about 20 lockers in there for a 75 plus coaches. Guys are getting changed like back to back, basically. You're crawling over people just to get to the bathroom. I mean, it's so tight. I mean, it was awful. But that's college football. You don't want to make your away locker rooms too comfortable. I mean, ours at SMU, you can't fully sit back in. The headrest is so low that you're kind of leaning forward the whole time. And Iowa has like a pink locker room. I mean, different teams do it different ways. You don't want to make the opposing team too comfortable.
Man, I will say about the new facilities, they have 2 zero gravity pools where they can run and walk and do all those things. And I don't know how to verify this, but somebody said that SMU is either one of like maybe a couple or one or the only school with 2, which that was kind of hard to believe. But I mean, those things are no joke. I watched them when they were installing it. It's such a operation to do and all those things. But so pretty cool stuff. They've got that. So obviously 2 different players can be doing that at one time, whereas you'd have to schedule another time for somebody to work out and do that. But all right, the final question here comes from our friend SMU02. How do you feel about having the 3rd bye week on the schedule this season? How much impact will it have in keeping the team staying fresh and healthy with the additional time to recover, especially playing a tougher schedule now in the ACC versus keeping momentum going throughout the season?
I think it's an odd balance. I mean, especially you usually only get 1 bye week. So you're really kind of waiting for the one, and then the one gets there, you're relieved. You kind of get your body back best you can. But with 3, especially ours that are spread out almost evenly, don't we have another one like exactly 3 weeks? Like after the next 3 games, we get the 3rd.
Yeah, it'll go. So SMU will get a bye after Louisville. They'll play Stanford. They'll play Duke. They'll play Pitt for homecoming, and then they'll get a bye, and then they play Boston College, UVA, and then Cal.
So the schedule is perfectly broken up into quarters, which I've never seen or heard of before. Normally, if you get 2 bye weeks, they're like 2 weeks after each other. It's something stupid. But as far as keeping the momentum of the season, I understand that a bye week can throw off momentum, but I think that's only if you don't take the bye week seriously, which when I was playing, we always talked about it as an open week. It was a week to get better. It was a week to, compete. We just didn't have an opponent that Saturday. And so I'm sure that's how Coach Lashley is approaching it. And these guys will continue to get better. They won't let them fall into kind of that slump that some teams do coming off of a bye. But yeah, with the additional time to recover, when I was playing, you loved the bye week. It was something where, all right, I'm exhausted. I've already played, 700 game snaps so far this year. Let me take this Saturday and lay on my couch, watch some football, and take an extra ice bath or two, and show up on Sunday feeling ready to go about who we're getting ready to play.
Yeah, I think the bye week this year, their situation that they have with it is really, really a positive for this team. And if it was a young football team, maybe not so much, but we also wouldn't maybe be talking about them as, all right, well, now they beat TCU and Florida State, and okay, they got Louisville. Man, you sure you want a bye week? Don't you want to just go play Stanford next week? Things like that. But I mean, the maturity of this team is last year was very good, and 2019 was very good. Multiple other seasons that I've covered, but I mean, this team is a really mature bunch, and they've had some things to figure out, but I don't worry about them at all on the bye week and what they're doing. I think they're going to be locked in, and even more so if they can go get a win this weekend. They know if they can not get by, because you don't want to look at it like that, but if they can win, they are thrust into position. And quite frankly, I'd rather them have a bye then to kind of like, all right, settle down, not start, making plans and doing all those things. You can have a bye, you can reset. Okay, back to work for what is a trip out west. I don't know if SMU is going out there a day early than normal because they are like smack dab in the middle. It's not like when you were in the league when you'd fly, from wherever to the opposite coast or two plus time zones. SMU is going to spend the night after the Stanford game out there because they have Sundays off now. So they're just going to go to the hotel, rest, get up, have breakfast, get on the plane, go back home, and treat it that way. But that'll be, of course, 2 weeks from now, after they get the bye after the Louisville game. So, yeah, I think it's set up great.
Yeah, one more thing about the bye just before we go. Buys in the NFL are different than buys in college. Buys in the NFL, they're grown men living away from their families. So most teams play on Sunday, and you come in on Monday for your post game, and then Tuesday rolls around. It's like, all right, see you guys next Tuesday, and you get a legit week off. In college, man, you still got class, you still have practice, you still have to be around, keeping your mind in football. I mean, most teams use it as just another week of prep for whoever's coming up next. It depended on the team. When I was with New England, I mean, we were there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday we got off, and then we were back on Monday. So it just depends on the culture, but Rhett Lashley's going to do a good job with it.
When I was working for the Redskins back then, we played in Philly, and I forget which season it was, but Pierre Garçon was with us, and he was a stud. And we had the bye the next week, and so the team, goes out of a private, fixed base of operations where you pull the buses on the tarmac, they get out, unload, whatever. Philly's a great situation for that. It's the best. It's 2 seconds from the stadium too, and it was the bye. Guys are out of there. Some guys are flying back and then flying to wherever. Some are going to Cabo. Some are going to this. Like, that's the NFL. Like, it's, you watch The Last Dance or whatever, and Scottie Pippen's going to Vegas or whatever. And, or no, Dennis Rodman's going to Vegas. Yeah. And then they're, getting him back in time for the game, 5 days later or whatever. That could be, some guys in the NFL. And Pierre was like, oh, I'm getting out of town, going over here or there or whatever. And he had a jet waiting for him, like right there, I guess some of his buddies. And they jetted on out of there. But anyway, I had to set him up to get dropped at the bus, and then we had a car take him over there. And that's, you're making that type of coin, man. I mean, it's a different world, but
that was exactly what I was going to say. Different world.
Yeah. Not us. One day, this pod, we're gonna have our own studio and all of that. One day. All right. Well, Hayden, enjoy Abilene. Enjoy the 11 a.m. kick for SMU. Let's go Abilene as well. Get a win. Go 2-0 on Saturday, and we'll bring it home next week on a bye week edition of the podcast. And we got some big things planned as well.
Stay tuned. Special guest coming.
You know what that means, everyone. Make sure you're locked in for next week. So check us out on theponyexpress.com. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel or wherever you follow the podcast at. Share it with your friends. Do all those things. We will have your full coverage on the ground in Louisville as SMU makes its first ever ACC road appearance. They'll do it against the Cardinals, 11 a.m. Central Time on Big ESPN. For Hayden Howerton, I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time on another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU on3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to ontheponyexpress.com for more coverage.